So before we start, since this is the English version, I should mention that Taiwan traffic can be dangerous. You may have heard many good things about Taiwan, but the traffic isn't one of them. So when you come to Taiwan and are on the road, stay sharp and be safe. Also, if you understand Chinese or don't like the following voiceover, you can watch the original Chinese version through the link in the description below. I narrated that one myself. Now let's start.
Taiwan's traffic has serious issues. But why have these problems been so hard to resolve over the years? What makes so many violators feel so entitled? And how is it that Taiwanese, normally so gentle, seem like different people when they get behind the wheel or hop on a scooter? All of this is actually related to a deeper psychological factor, a kind of anxiety that Taiwanese people have about time efficiency and economics, and this pursuit of efficiency is connected to Taiwanese people's self-esteem in society. Today, we're going to explore this psychological aspect. Let's dive in. Taiwan's traffic situation is problematic, as many have experienced firsthand. But you'll notice that these issues are widespread across Taiwan, not just in chaotic or congested areas, but even on wide clearly marked roads. Traffic problems persist over the long term. Sometimes, the bigger and better the roads, the faster and more aggressively some people drive. This usually indicates that beyond external infrastructure, there are deeper underlying human psychological factors. In other words, even when Taiwan's road design is excellent, you'll find that Taiwanese traffic behavior remains similar, driving fast, pushing everything to the limit, not yielding to pedestrians, and so on. In contrast, many say Taiwanese people are very patient when queuing, and seem very polite on various forms of public transportation. How can there be such a big difference in the same transportation context? If we observe closely, we'll discover that the core difference lies in whether time is controlled by oneself. That is, when queuing, the speed at which the queue moves has nothing to do with you. On the MRT, buses, or trains, you can't change how long it takes to travel between stations, nor can you claim credit if the train makes that trip quickly. At most, you can boast about how quickly you walk and transfer between stations, so we can indeed find people bragging about how quickly they transfer between MRT stations and lines, and some people start rushing during these transfers. The same applies to regular traffic. When riding or driving, as the speed and arrival time are partly in one's own hands, this triggers a kind of anxiety in some Taiwanese people, rushing anxiety about time. As if in these people's eyes, spending even one extra second in traffic is a waste of efficiency. For example, in Taiwan, speed limits usually have something like a 70 km per hour limit with a 10 tolerance zone. What happens with Taiwanese traffic culture in this case? They'll push it to that full 10 km per hour tolerance, accelerating right up to the moment before getting fined, only slowing down at the critical point of being penalized. They also tend to cut their departure times to the last minute. Let's say you need to be at work by 9 a.m., and under optimal conditions, at high speed with smooth traffic lights, it takes 20 minutes. You'll find people leaving at 8:40 a.m., with almost no margin, and naturally ending up frantically testing the limits, and rushing all the way. Where does this anxiety about having to utilize every minute and second come from? If we look deeper, you'll find it's tied to one thing: efficiency. But what kind of efficiency? The kind that revolves around money, economics, and making a profit. In Taiwan, this notion of efficiency is often intertwined with social perception, and a person's self-esteem regarding how powerful they are perceived to be. In other words, this rushing mentality implicitly contains messages about economics, efficiency, and how powerful a person is. For these people, the shorter the time spent in traffic and the tighter they cut it, the more it demonstrates their high efficiency, superior skills, capacity to handle many tasks in a day, high economic productivity, and consequently elevated self-esteem. Like the speed limit example earlier, if you don't push it to 80 km per hour in Taiwan as the limit plus tolerance zone, and instead follow the actual speed limit, leaving more buffer space to better handle unexpected situations, you'll find that every car on the road passes you. And when they pass, they'll even mock you, suggesting your driving skills must be poor if you're going so slow. So in the eyes of some Taiwanese drivers, driving fast, driving aggressively, and refusing to yield to others means, I'm skilled. Conversely, if you yield, would that mean your driving or riding skills are poor? If not, why let others go? Don't you have the confidence to get through? And when there's a gap between cars or between people and cars, why don't you squeeze through? I squeeze through every gap I see, weaving through any space I find, that's being skilled. I can squeeze between cars, isn't that great? And at intersections with blind spots, should you slow down and be careful? Who cares? Charging straight through without slowing down, because rushing is the priority. Precisely because in Taiwan, this is connected to a person's social perception of how powerful and economically efficient they are. This mentality becomes so rampant and self-righteous, that whether accidents happen, or other people's lives matter seems unimportant to these people. What matters is demonstrating that they're more skilled, aggressive, and dominant in traffic. But if we look more carefully at this perception of efficiency, you'll discover that this so-called efficiency is very surface level, and present-focused. Looking at extremely short-term rather than substance or long-term efficiency, since every time an accident happens, you face significant financial losses, time losses, and more importantly, human injuries and fatalities. Especially this last point, in contemporary society, raising a person from birth to adulthood requires enormous resources and creates strong emotional bonds. So human beings are indeed incredibly valuable. But you'll find that in Taiwan, human life isn't valued much, and people love to trade the risk of injury or death for 1 or 2 seconds. Many Taiwanese people love gambling on those split seconds, dashing forward at the last moment. Much of Taiwanese people's sense of pride is built on a kind of reckless bravado. As is often said in Taiwan, in various construction projects here, veteran workers tend to cut corners, play fast and loose with safety, yet they believe this way proves their skill, that it's faster. Such people prioritize short-term efficiency over safety, and take this mindset as completely natural. They're extremely calculating about immediate, visible things, but other hidden and external costs, things they can't see or show off about, they ignore as unimportant. This is a mentality that severely underestimates risks and costs, while greatly overestimating gains, especially gains that can be attributed to oneself. This habit of building one's self-esteem on superficial efficiency, when manifested in traffic, shows up as minimizing following distances to almost nothing, sudden braking and acceleration, cutting across lanes wildly, and motorcycles squeezing through any gap they see, not to mention pedestrians, who cross roads directly through the middle when traffic lights, crosswalks, or footbridges are nearby, just to appear more efficient. Some even thread their way between cars, right through blind spots where drivers can't possibly see them, until they suddenly emerge, one step away from being hit. There are places and methods that carry extremely high risks. But what happens? Efficiency anxiety kicks in. A few extra steps to the intersection, too slow. Not squeezing through gaps, poor time utilization. Leaving space between cars. Bad skills. So when traffic becomes connected to a person's sense of social competence and capability, you'll find that the entire city turns into a racetrack. Taiwan's traffic then becomes an arena for competing egos. As you'll see in Taiwan, when red lights are about to turn green, it's exactly like the start of a race. People fight for that 0.1 second advantage, with no room for hesitation. And the motorists behind have their accelerators ready, expecting the person in front to start immediately, as they'll follow right behind. When encountering intersections, they don't want to slow down at all, just charging straight through. The more impatient you appear, the more it demonstrates your racing skills and elite status. At various merging points, it's all about getting there first, like a game of chicken to see who's more reckless. Sometimes when encountering pedestrians at green crosswalks, some drivers will insist on turning first, forcing pedestrians to give way. If pedestrians don't notice, they'll get hit outright. And when they see yellow lights turning red, what do Taiwanese road users do? They accelerate as much as they can to get across, like trying to clear a level in a racing game. Even after the light has turned red, some will go full throttle and force their way through. As a result, when accidents occur, they tend to be very serious. When a society's traffic culture is bound up with a person's outward display of pride, taking to the road is no longer just about reaching a destination, but also a contest for ego. You'll see some people who are unsuited to driving, still insist on doing so, because they see it as a matter of personal pride. And the weaker someone is in real life, the less someone has to boast about, the more they like to pursue ego gratification through traffic, and the more determined they are to display their skill and impatience on the road. When the entire society's culture is like this, and there are enough such people, they also pressure others. Continuing the previous example, suppose you approach an intersection where you could choose to yield, but there's a whole line of aggressive motorists behind you, speeding and tailgating. If you slow down, you risk being rear-ended. It's the same when the light turns green. If you don't move off quickly, the drivers behind will start honking and closing in on you. And when you see a yellow light, you need to be prepared to go through, because those behind will assume you will. If you stop at yellow, you might get rear-ended too. In Taiwan, every spot where you need to slow down and pay attention is a dilemma. If you slow down, you might get hit from behind. Also, following distances are minimized to the shortest possible. To someone unfamiliar, it might seem as if cars in Taiwan have already been fitted with AI. How else could they move like links in a chain, one after another at high speed, with no safety gap, as if an AI and a smart city system had already coordinated them in advance? In reality, Taiwan's traffic is an arena for competing in aggressiveness. If you're someone who maintains safe following distances, you'll find cars constantly cutting in front of you, and you might even be mocked, as if your driving skills aren't good enough. Otherwise, why would you let others cut in front of you? Sometimes Taiwanese people aren't worried about losing time by keeping a safe following distance, but about other cars cutting in and competing for space. In Taiwan, minimize safe distances as much as possible, squeeze into every gap you see, leave no reaction time. That's what passes for skill. At this point, you might be wondering, don't people in other countries also compete for efficiency? Don't many of them pride themselves on their skills? Indeed, such situations exist everywhere, but their intensity in Taiwan seems on another level. The key here is that foreign countries have something that overrides this: virtue. In foreign countries, people see someone who yields to others as perhaps of higher class, with noble character. That kind of courtesy, stopping to wait for others, is seen as a symbol of true strength. Conversely, in Taiwan, many people don't really care about virtue. Nobility of spirit is not what people tend to admire. Instead, if you're rich, you speak louder. Society admires the nouveau riche, not those of good character, but those who are aggressive, forceful, and ostentatious in displaying their wealth. So in Taiwan, not following rules is called being skilled and capable, whereas following rules is called being weak and useless. This reveals a mindset lacking higher ideals, a deficit of transcendence. As a result, many people place particular importance on superficial, worldly displays of aggression and dominance. For these motorists, is your life more important than my making money, and fighting for ego? Clearly, the lives of others matter less to them than their pursuit of pride in this worldly arena. So why is there so much road rage in Taiwan? Because the traffic scene is, for many motorists, a stage for their pride, one of the rare places in life where they can act as if they're somebody. When that performance is interrupted, their anger knows no bounds. Some people in Taiwan love to tailgate aggressively, a similar phenomenon. At its root, this is because they lack genuine sources of self-esteem, and can only grasp at a sense of relevance through such behavior. Also, since it's initially connected to social perceptions of a person's efficiency and economic capability. When driving or riding, speed is directly tied to how quickly they can make money, as with large trucks, cargo vans, taxis, or delivery riders, you'll find that the good ones are very good, and the bad ones are very bad. The good ones naturally follow all the rules because they know this is their profession, and they can't mess around. But the bad ones, you'll discover, are obviously the type who won't yield to anyone, willing to pull any stunt, and are utterly self-righteous about it, as if the road belonged to them and everyone else had better get out of the way, or risk getting hit. Moreover, having overweight, overloaded, overheight vehicles is sometimes normal for them. They also consider all this perfectly legitimate. Isn't it reasonable for me to make money? Otherwise, are you going to compensate me for the profit I lost? And when it comes to illegal parking, they do it with absolute self-righteousness, claiming this is what doing business is all about. If you can't park illegally, then nobody can do business. In fact, the further out they park into the street, the more it's seen as proof that business is booming, something they wear as a badge of pride. With this understanding, we can say that to improve Taiwan's traffic, the best approach might be through both penalties and cultural change. Will heavier penalties be effective? Absolutely, they may not completely eliminate the problem, but they can reduce the rates and lower the chances of accidents. Since this traffic culture is tied to efficiency and money from the very beginning, if you earn a lot by making many trips, but then lose it all to the government in one fine, you'll find there's no room left for arrogance. Because its origin lies in a contest of pride driven by economic efficiency, to overcome this contest you must counter it with an even greater economic risk, namely, very heavy fines when caught. Especially when companies or employers get fined, because some individuals simply aren't afraid, when trouble comes, they just move their assets out of reach. But companies would be afraid, so companies will calculate whether it's worth it. If the heavy fines make it very unprofitable, they'll regulate their drivers. This is especially true in passenger transport and delivery companies, where the way management monitors operations has a marked influence on driver culture. As for the cultural side, there was once a case involving motorcycle helmets. At that time, not wearing helmets not only resulted in fines, but more importantly, there seemed to be a social perception that not wearing helmets looked bad, combined with Taiwanese cultural conformity, so the effect was better. From these examples we can see that to improve Taiwan's traffic, we must work on both fronts, penalties and culture, to truly achieve some results. Finally, let's wrap up. Taiwan's traffic problems can be traced to two categories of underlying factors: external infrastructure and the internal mindset of its people. The latter, where economic efficiency and personal pride are bound up with traffic behavior, means that even when the physical infrastructure improves, the problems on the road persist. You'll find that in some Taiwanese people's eyes, high speed, exploiting loopholes, not following rules, are seen as signs of efficiency, skill, and mastery, which in turn are linked with being powerful, economically efficient, running a big business, and having personal pride. This mindset has turned Taiwan's roads into racetracks for ego. It also shows that merely improving infrastructure may not be enough. A cultural shift is needed before the overall traffic situation can truly improve. As for why Taiwan has this kind of misunderstanding about efficiency, caring about superficial, short-term efficiency, while actually ignoring long-term efficiency and external costs, if you look closely, you'll find that many things in Taiwan, including corporate management and educational methods, also operate with this kind of hurried, time-pressuring spirit. On the surface it seems to emphasize efficiency, but compared to genuine effectiveness, it doesn't seem particularly strong. This is in fact part of a much broader framework, an entire worldview that values immediate, quick returns while neglecting overall, long-term value. The prevalence of this worldview in Taiwan is related to the history of its economic development. It manifests not only in traffic but across many other fields, and continues to shape Taiwan today.
And we can have another video in the future to talk about this mindset. That's all for today's video on traffic. What are your thoughts on Taiwan's traffic? Feel free to share them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and take care. See you next time.